All right, welcome to the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Darras, joining us from Canada. He's a staff writer at Latest.com and a contributor at IssueHawk. From Toronto, Eric Carrier, and he's a military vet at Latest.com. I'm sorry, he's a 24-year veteran of the U.S. State Department and Latest.com staff writer, the author of We Meant Well, and probably the guy who hit O.J.'s knife from New York, Peter Van Buren. Well, last night we saw another Republican debate descend into complete chaos, certainly the first debate in memory where a candidate has invoked the size of his penis. Peter, did anyone come out of that Fox News mess a winner, or did we all lose?
I mean, I think America collectively lost last night.
About 10 IQ points.
I mean, we literally have lost our minds. As you pointed out, a candidate for president of the United States, in fact, at this point, the presumptive nominee spoke about his penis size. And that was one of the high points.
That's how the debate started.
Trump, the thing that's even scarier than Trump, the crazy man, is that Trump actually here and there's little bits of truth in some of what he talks about. When he talks about Mitt Romney being a loser who ran a bad campaign, there's actually some truth to that. When he talks about America's trade deficit, there's little bits of truth in that. But otherwise, I'm not sure if you could say any of those four men last night won anything. I think they all just diminished themselves and embarrassed themselves.
Eric, did anything stand out to you in this debate compared to the previous ones we've seen, which really haven't been that different?
I think this debate, as compared to the others, was more high school level than we've ever seen. Some of the other debates, maybe they talked about issues very shallowly, but this one, it was just kind of insult after insult, penis jokes, hand sizes, a little bit of Trump University, Ted Cruz really trying to get his chance to speak and being silenced because, Ted Cruz is an idiot. I don't think there was anything of substance to pull out of this one. It was just chaos. But that worked well for Trump because that's his game. And when he can avoid actually talking about policy, it works well for him.
Yeah, well, I think Chris Wallace, who did a great job, Fox News has just done a great job with all these debates compared to the other networks.
Yeah, they've been actually pretty solid throughout the election.
They've done a great job of holding the candidates' feet to the fire and, actually fact-checking them on their numbers. So Wallace completely destroyed Donald Trump's math. He pointed out that Trump's plan to abolish the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Education, which, yes, Donald Trump wants to get rid of the U.S. Department of Education, would still leave the deficit at over $500 billion. And then Trump went on this whole thing how we're going to save money because we're going to better negotiate Medicare drug costs. He's such a great negotiator. He said we're going to save $300 billion. And Chris Wallace just mentioned that, Medicare only spends $78 billion a year on drug costs. It might be a little hard to reach that sum. Megyn Kelly hit him on the flip-flops, on the Trump University lawsuits. And by all measures, Trump really looked terrible coming out of the debate. But, Eric, is any of this going to affect any of his support at all?
Here's the thing. I mean, what hasn't he said already this election? And the things he has said have never affected him. I mean, he always comes out with these crazy statements. He shrugs them off. He'll blame the moderators for being biased. He'll blame the liberal media for attacking him, which is weird because it's Fox. But somehow he'll manage
last
to
night
he
offered no objections to the moderators last night. So
no, of course.
He's growing up.
Later, look at the KKK thing. During that comment this week, he went on about how he didn't want to disavow them, and then he blamed the earpiece later. I'm sure he's going to blame something later on. He just wants to see how it's going to settle first. I bet you within a week, Americans will forget this debate occurred, because it seems like there's almost a debate every week right now, and so they're losing.
If you think there's a lot of debates right now, so there's a Democratic debate on Sunday, there's a Democratic debate on Wednesday, and then there's a Republican debate on Thursday. So if you think there's a lot of debates now, wait till next week.
Both sides.
Yeah,
no. But
if there was a winner last night, you guys have pointed it out, and it was Fox. In the great collection of who would have believed it a year ago things, we're now sitting there saying that Fox has run the best debates now more than once. Of any of the networks, including the
They've
PBS
almost become
one.
centrist, which is strange.
Well, they've at least been responsible. They've called out candidates on completely ridiculous things, which CNN, for example, clearly didn't
We're going to have Josh. Josh Patton, the Latest.com senior political analyst, joining us mid-show. Welcome aboard. What was that, Peter?
Oh, so I mean, the idea is that Fox has emerged as the responsible network of the debates, which all by itself is as amazing as everything else that's going on in this campaign. I just shake my head.
Oh, Josh, we were just talking about Fox News moderators holding Trump's feet to the fire yesterday, fact-checking on some of his dubious numbers. Do you think any of that fact-checking will really affect any of his support at all, though? Oh, we can't hear Josh. Josh's microphone is off. Oh, no. It's a disaster.
I mean, I think I can answer for all of us here and say, no, it won't. Facts have not troubled the Trump supporters from his very first campaign statements. And there's no reason to believe at this point now that it'll matter to them. His
we
theme
apologize
of
for our $1 million
anger,
production budget.
yeah, his themes are fact-free. And he has created this amazing bubble around himself where he can do or say absolutely anything, it doesn't touch him.
Wasn't it PolitiFact that deemed 78% of his statements or something were false, or leaning towards false? There was a note about that the other
I
day.
believe that actually the number was something like they fact-checked like 76 statements and like 73% were actually false or not completely true.
That's a substantial amount. And a lot of his bigger statements on big issues tend to really be false and completely Trumpified.
Yeah. Josh, do we have you now?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear Josh.
All right. I'm just going to agree with my colleagues here in that I don't think that it'll affect Trump supporters.
While you were gone, your colleagues said horrifically racist things, so you shouldn't jump.
Oh, well.
It was his earpiece.
Yes. They were talking about groups. I don't know what groups. I have to do research. But that's the thing, is it is the most genius move ever in a debate, and I hope that every network starts doing it, because I do think in some cases, though, that moment where Trump was talking about, I believe it was immigration, and then they just, they proved right in front of him that he had lied. And while I don't know if the supporters registered with it, the people who still are undecided, they watched him change his position on the stage, and then an hour after the debate, release a statement reversing it once again. So it may not have affected any of the support he already has, but I don't think it won him any new support. And I think that is a crucial first step in the Republican effort to stop Trump. Because, again, with everyone else being ridiculous, he just keeps gaining momentum because he was ridiculous when he got in. And where do you go from there?
Yeah, one of the more interesting points brought up at the debate last night was Trump's plan to, kill families of terrorists, which is his big plan to fight ISIS. And Trump says that even though carrying out such an order would violate all sorts of international laws, the military wouldn't refuse his orders. Josh, you're a vet. What's your take on this?
He's completely wrong. I can't even imagine. I mean, I remember I deployed twice, once to Bosnia and once to Iraq. And I remember before each time they showed these delightfully hilarious videos about the Geneva Conventions. And it's funny because it's an issue as serious as war crimes, and it's the exact same kind of workplace training video you'd get about, any kind of inane, silly thing you'd see in a company. There's, just an actor and the guy's like, burn that village, private. And he's like, no, sir, that's against the rule. So, I mean, it's very ingrained in our training to recognize that unlawful orders exist and that if you're given them, you don't follow them. And I can't imagine that there's a situation in which any soldier could rightfully refuse an order that he or she wouldn't take it, because that alone just would feel great to be like, no, sir. So no, it's horseshit. It was nonsense. It was offensive. And, I can't believe that, the lead story was Trump's comments about his penis and not his insistence that his military would not balk at committing war crimes. It's the first time it's really gotten not funny.
Let me offer a counterpoint there, and not to disparage the great majority of men and women in government and in uniform, but we do have to remember that there are individuals who have followed orders to torture people, to assist in detaining them indefinitely, to assassinate people, including 2 American citizens by drone, to drop bombs on cities where they are civilians there, to accidentally or perhaps not so accidentally attack hospitals and medical facilities. I am sad to say that there are people who would do what Trump would ask them to do. Many of our proudest units, Special Forces units, in particular SEAL Team 6 and Delta, have evolved into assassination squads. And they have little to say about their targets, and I'm sure in many cases have little information about their targets other than here's the guy, here's what he looks like, here's where he lives. I doubt that too many of the special operators, get on Wikipedia and try to see if there might be another side to all this. So while there are an extraordinary number of good people out there, the idea of you just have to look around for the right people to do the dirty jobs. And they're there, and the living proof is the last, 15 years.
I don't completely disagree with what you said, Peter, but I think that that's a false equivalency that you're making. As you pointed out, the people who are, arming the drones may not know as much intel about a place as maybe perhaps they should. So, yes, if the order gets to the drone pilot or whomever to kill the families or whatever, it could very well happen. But at no point, with the exception of, people on the ground in the thick of war and possibly not in control of their faculties or just an evil bastard, it's one or the other, that's how war crimes happen. They don't happen, at least in the American military. There are very few people who are, actively out there trying to fucking commit war crimes. It doesn't happen. It happens by accident. It's a shame when it does. And it's also a reality of the situation. I mean, when we were in Iraq, we weren't the ones hiding amongst civilians. I mean, yes, civilians died in Iraq and during the Iraq War, but I think the crucial difference between what the America was responsible for and what the enemy was responsible for is that, we judged our mission's success by how few civilian casualties there are, and they judged their mission's success by how many. And that's a very important distinction. And so the idea that there could be policy from the White House that we take out terrorist families, that would never get to the ground. That's my point, is that the Joint Chiefs, the commander, and any number of people along the chain of command would say, fuck no. I don't really...
The problem is that, what you've described about civilians is actually much more connected to the difference to asymmetrical warfare. The difference between having tanks and planes and laser sights and night vision and having a rusty AK-47 as your main weapon. So that is not, in fact, the analogy or the example that clicks with this. Second, we have seen terrible things done as policy under orders from the president, including torture and indefinite imprisonment. And
we also have to say
that's the CIA, man.
We have to separate what the CIA does and what the military does.
Yeah, there's some very blurry lines about who's doing what out there, what constitutes a person in or out of uniform at any given moment in time. But the bottom line is these things were done by somebody. The other thing, though, is that, the order from the White House isn't going to be, Private Patton, go murder that terrorist's wife and kid. Oh, pardon me, sir. Oh, wait. Sorry, you're not at all.
I work for a living, Peter.
Yeah, I had the rank of equivalent of colonel, but yeah, okay, never mind. The thing is that it doesn't come down to Sergeant Patton kill that terrorist wife. It comes to a drone operator with the building at these grid coordinates needs to be destroyed, or to an F-16 pilot who says we're laser designating a house. That's where we need the ordnance, and so. It remains, unfortunately, all too real to me that somebody like Trump could find a way to do this. We have justified the murder of civilians. I'm working on more research on Hiroshima right now. And when you talk to some of the veterans and people like that, or even look into the archives from coming out of the White House, I mean, it's like, well, Japan's government wouldn't surrender, so they sort of deserved it. There's this undercurrent of, well, they deserved it, that justifies the murder of people that are, if it was the other way around, if we were the losing side, it would be considered a war crime. So, I mean, not to get, too granular about all this, but unfortunately, history suggests that there are people who are willing to do terrible things. There are people who are willing to follow orders because they're afraid not to. And there are people who are very clever about justifying what they want to happen.
Well, I also bring that up to go back to Josh's point about the flip-flopping because, he just said that not even 24 hours ago. He's already kind of backed off of that. He said, well, we would only keep things in the legal realm. He said that we need things where it's no waterboarding, double down on torture yesterday. Today, he again said, well, I wouldn't make anyone do anything illegal. Live on the air last night, he changed his position on guest workers and his immigration policy, then changed it back again. He said last night that he's flexible. He says a leader needs to be flexible. But how can anyone that supports him trust him anything that he says when he completely changes his positions within hours of saying them, like today? Peter?
Well, you can't trust it. I mean, that's the bottom line. We mentioned earlier that there was a political fact checking that found out he was lying about three quarters of everything that came out of his mouth was a lie. You can't trust him. This is the great danger of Trump, is that he will simply make shit up. I don't think he's even doing it quite as planned as some people, for example, say about Hillary, where she says what people, what she thinks people want to hear at any given moment. I think Trump just is pulling this shit completely out of his ass. He probably doesn't even remember. Yeah, he didn't even remember what his previous position was. He was probably as surprised as anybody when Fox put those slides up, and he doesn't care either. He's simply a demagogue. And, the script for demagogues is fairly straightforward, and that is to keep spewing hate, to keep stirring people up, to keep finding weak folks to make targets out of. And that's what Trump is doing. I mean, his rallies right now where somebody gets beaten up, kind of as it's kind of like it's kind of like when you go see, the Who. You pay to see a guitar smashed at the end. And if you don't get a guitar smashed, you feel cheated. And so that's it. If you don't have a racist beating or the Secret Service throw down a reporter or whatever, it's sort of like, why did I bother to come out for the Trump rally? But I mean, this stuff, it's not hard to trace a path between what Trump's doing now and some kind of brown shirts reminiscent of the 30s in Germany.
We talked about it before, how the Republican Party, more than anyone, seeks out pretty much ideological purity. One of the biggest attacks they can level on someone is that they're a Republican in name only, or they're a flip-flopper. Josh, how is it that the most, this movement in the conservative party, which you would think would only value someone like Ted Cruz, who never backs off of any of his positions, has now rallied around the guy who, is completely unstable in his positions and probably in his emotional health?
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the sort of the culture they created to sort of galvanize that movement. And by culture, I mean the media, the media outlets that are more conservative, the positions of all the, political pundits and elected officials and movements like the Tea Party. And to sort of illustrate that point, Peter just mentioned brown shirts. And, guaranteed people listening or watching this, some of them rolled their eyes because, it's like, okay, somebody finally compared someone to Hitler. It must be a discussion about politics. And I think that's sort of, why we're struggling because, if you look back to any election, Obama is a tyrant. Bush was a demagogue. Romney and McCain are flip-flopper rhinos who change positions. I mean, Hillary Clinton is a criminal, and she's, treason. But I'm just saying, there's all this rhetoric. So now, when we have a real fucking demagogue, we don't have the luxury of the strong language necessary to effectively tell people to wake the fuck up and really look at this guy. So when, this is why Fox News, who basically created this monster, was, it turned on him because they were like, wait a minute, this isn't what we want. But he said he's hitting all the right notes and hitting the dog whistle stuff, doesn't seem to like Muslims. He's angry, I'm angry. So they turn on them because they've trained their audience to completely discount facts, completely ignore context, and the most conservative position is the one that's been yelled the loudest. So that's how we ended up with Trump. It's because there's no way to warn people any more effectively. So when the Washington Post, or not even the Washington Post, when fucking Salon or the Daily, I don't know, Kos, I don't know what that one is, but when them and Breitbart are or the Blaze are linked up in saying, hey, this guy Trump is bad, people don't go, oh, wait, maybe he's bad. They go, fucking Blaze, liberal media now. So, I think that's part of the reason why he continues in spite of anything. Like anything that he said last night would have tanked any other candidate on its own. And I guarantee you he's going to get a bump in the at least a bump of support from the people who already like him.
Yeah, the Blaze, for people who don't know, is Glenn Beck's new TV station, which I'm sure is flourishing, being buried like 200 channels down in cable. Eric, does it scare you more? Does a President Trump with the policies that he's proposed scare you more than a President Trump who you don't even know what he thinks?
I think knowing what he's saying is safer because based on the current American political system, he wouldn't be able to actually get much done. Congress will block him, even if it's a Republican-dominated one, especially if he's a bit crazy with the ideas.
No, he's not making any friends in Congress these days.
No, that's right. I mean, the majority of Congress and the Senate all hate him. The GOP establishment has pretty much denounced him. A couple, of them have come out in support of him. The current candidates denounced him for the longest time. Only last night did they say they would work with him if he was nominated. So it's pretty clear that there's a major divide in the Republican Party, and I don't think he would be able to accomplish much as president. It would just be kind of, he passed a couple of small executive orders, but I don't think he could, ban all immigrants, ban all Muslims. That stuff would never happen unless there was a major event that took place to piss people off. But I don't see that happening. So.
I never rule out the chance of another terrorist attack. But so it's been interesting to see how the Republican Party is just pulling out all the tricks they can to try to stop Trump. So the policy stuff hasn't worked. The fact checking hasn't worked. Now Trump is being hammered for Trump University and his other Trump businesses like Trump Steaks, Trump Airlines, Trump Mortgage, Trump Vodka, Trump Water, Trump Magazine. It's a very long list. So obviously attacking the policy doesn't work. Facts doesn't work. But doesn't the long string of business failures dampen his whole image that he's created of being a huge success, Josh?
One hopes. I actually thought that of all the things that Mitt Romney was going to talk about yesterday was that his comments on his businesses would take hold because, I admit to not knowing their personal wealth, but I would guess Romney's doing better than Trump, but maybe not.
No,
so
it's
I don't
actually
know.
not even close. So Trump is worth somewhere between $4 and $9 billion. Mitt Romney's worth somewhere between 150 and 250 billion. I'm sorry, million.
Oh my God! So he's basically a gas station attendant. So what would he even know about business? Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is, I don't remember if it was in the debate or if it was in Trump's response to Romney's speech, but I know that the magazine was mentioned as one of the business failures. And then in that response that came from Trump next, he mentions the magazines as like one of his successful businesses as an afterthought too. Like he was just trying to remember, like pull shit out of the ether, like Peter was saying. And so he said the magazine, not even realizing that the magazine was one of the things he got hit on. So to be fair though, I think that regardless of his wealth, he kind of is the best in sort of what modern 21st century business is. Because think about it, it's all fucking branding now. It's all about your brand. It's not really about your product or your service or if your customers stay or what. It's about your brand. And no one does branding like Trump.
Right, but, Eric, he has built up this brand that he's this massive success. So what happens to at least some of his supporters, when you just list off the many, many business ventures that have gone nowhere?
Are we talking about voters in this sense?
Yeah, well, Trump voters.
I don't think many of them care. They're going to see that he has Trump Tower and other big establishments and say, oh, he's doing well. I mean, it's funny. We talk about the brand, and it's important, but there's cases of him like selling his brand to developers and then completely tanking deals, and then he faces massive lawsuits out of that. I don't think the average American thinks Trump is doing poorly because they'll see that
he's not.
That's well, at least in no, he's not doing poorly. But I would venture out to say that considering the massive amount of wealth he's had, he hasn't grown it as well as he should have been able to. I think that's a fair.
Yeah, but that's only going to matter to people like the donor class, to anybody.
Of course. I agree with you, but what I'm saying, the average voter doesn't give a shit about that. They see that his net worth, when they type Donald Trump net worth on Google, is $8 billion or something, and they say, "Wow, he's rich. Okay, let's vote for him." If that's what they basically vote on.
They probably think his greatest business success was getting on WWE.
Right. Or
wait a minute. Wait.
And firing some celebrity.
Wait a minute. There's something important that we haven't talked about. And that was, the way that you thought, this whole business thing, you see how Trump twisted it last night. He said to Rubio, how many people have you hired in your career? How many jobs have you created? And he tricked Rubio into saying something basically like, well, I haven't ever created any jobs. And then he had to quickly stumble and say, because that's not what government does. That meme of creating jobs, I can't remember, it may have been one of the early Bushes. I'm not sure which candidate made a big deal about having met payrolls. And have you ever met a payroll? I don't remember which election
it is familiar.
It was one of those little kind of themelets that emerged about meeting payrolls and things like that. And Trump turned it right around. And, some businesses work and some ventures don't succeed. But overall, look at me. And what do you got, Rubio? Cruz, what have you ever done in terms of business or anything like that? So Trump owns that idea. It's a very powerful meme for Americans.
I don't know what the demographics are on his employee base, but I would wager a large portion of them are very low-paying jobs and more than likely to immigrants, right? So he acts like he's creating high-paying jobs for Americans, but let's be honest, he's not. It's hotel.
I think we've already agreed that facts are not really relevant to this discussion.
But I think I started one of my articles say, fact-checking, what is that in Donald Trump's world, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, this is about brand and themes and painting these sort of pictures in people's minds. And the picture is, I'm Trump, I create wealth, I create jobs, I build tall buildings and hotels and whatever. And Marco, all you do is stand there and argue in the Senate. And Ted Cruz, you're a lawyer and nobody even likes you in the Senate. I mean, these are the themes that people walk away with. You go back to like Trump changing his immigration stance on stage and then releasing something afterwards. I mean, to the majority of Americans, certainly the kind of person who's drawn to a demagogue, that stuff doesn't even matter. If anything, it allows Trump to have two different positions out there, and people can kind of pick the one they like best.
Yeah, well, I mean, back to the Republican list of things that they're throwing at Trump. So they tried policy, they tried flip-flops, they tried facts, they tried brand, and yesterday they trotted out former Republican nominee Mitt Romney. He called Trump a fraud and a phony, and then 2008 nominee John McCain piled on. He called Trump dangerous and misinformed. And will any of this actually affect the voting? Or does this actually help Trump, given that the party still isn't thrilled with either of those two guys because of how badly they got their ass kicked by Obama? Eric?
I mean, I think there's.
I was going to say Trump can easily flip it, just saying, "Well, those two lost. Look at me, I'm winning." That's how he'll kind of form it. He'll play the whole Trump's a winner and they're losers card.
Josh?
Well, I think that there's two voting blocks that are being fought for, and this is where the real campaign is that it's the Trump vote and the not Trump vote. Looking over the analyses that have come out of both the votes and polls and stuff, I mean, Trump is pretty much consistently like 35-40% of support with Republicans. And so that's a little more than a third. So that means the majority of, the one thing Rubio said that is correct last night is that the majority of Republican votes cast have been cast for not Trump.
Mind you, Trump does a lot better in primaries where independents and Democrats can vote, as opposed to states where just Republicans can vote.
Absolutely, and you never know if there's any trickery going on where Democrats are going to him to fuck up the.
In Virginia, 6 of the people that voted in the Republican primary were Democrats. It's hard to tell who they voted for, though.
Yeah, well, and it's weird. I mean, that could be the Democrats not liking Clinton or Sanders, or it could be them going to, just mess with the other team. Hopefully it's the latter, because that's funnier. But
until he gets elected.
But I think that going forward, like once we get past March 15th and we know who is going to be not Trump in the election, and you have the winner take all states, that's where the real fight's going to be. And so the question will be is in those states like, New York, Pennsylvania, out west, is if the people who are drawn to Trump are outweighed by the Republicans who want to save their party. That's the actual question. Trump still could very much likely be the nominee. There's a chance he might not be, but that's the battle that's going to play out now. So I think that as long as, the people who care about facts aren't being convinced by Trump, there's a shot. If Trump was able to somehow turn that flip-flop thing around and make Megyn Kelly look foolish, he would have won the nomination.
Well, that would have been hard to do considering his dubious math. Go ahead, Peter.
The thing about the Stop Trump, first of all, it's insane. It's unbelievable that the Republican Party is trying to torpedo the guy who's ahead in its primaries. I mean, that alone is yet another amazing thing. But,
and making them the biggest show on earth right now.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is like the Joker. He may just be content to stand there and watch it all burn. So, imagine at some point where the Stop Trump starts to get a little too close to him, or he just decides to get pissed off and he says, the hell with all you people, I'm going to be an independent. I mean, at that point, there's no value in the Republicans even bothering to continue the campaign into November. I mean, we might as well just elect Hillary at that moment, and kind of get a head start on things. Because
maybe it's a conspiracy.
If Trump were to pull, if Trump were to pull his support away, there won't be enough Republicans left to vote to beat the Democrat. So he holds a lot of cards here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this Wednesday. It's just stunning how openly the establishment Republicans are now hoping for a contested convention. Josh, when has a contested convention ever gone well for the party?
Mitt Romney said today he would go, I forget who he was speaking to, someone on Bloomberg, but he said that he would vote third party if it was Trump-Hillary. That's huge.
But, I mean,
you have the prior nominee of the party.
It's one of the reasons that the primary schedule is set up the way it is to prevent exactly this kind of scenario where a possibility of a contested convention, and now the party is literally wishing on itself the worst thing that could happen at a convention. All right, well, let's talk about the math though. So if Trump doesn't win Ohio and Florida, which are both winner-take-all states, there's a good chance that Trump doesn't reach the necessary amount of delegates he needs to win, because after that, if he loses both of them, he'd need 2/3 of the remaining delegates. He's probably going to win Florida, though. It looks like he's up by almost 20% in some polls there. He's in a virtual tie with John Kasich in Ohio. So if he wins Florida and loses Ohio, it'll be a little tough for him to reach that number, but it's a little more realistic than if he loses both. Josh, forget the plot to overthrow him. How likely is it that we're just going to see this number not get hit this time around?
Well, it's funny because I have two answers. I have what my brain tells me. But then I have to think that, like everything else in this election, what you do is you figure out what the worst possible scenario is, and that's usually what happens. So I would bet we will be faced with a slim win by Kasich, loss for Rubio in Florida. And the real question is, if Rubio, I don't know, how is Kasich, is he polling at all in Florida? Does he have any?
Not that close, and it's a winner-take-all state, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, because what I was thinking is that, like, maybe if it looks like when Ohio, Rubio's going to lose Florida, Rubio falls on his sword for the party to save his future and tries to get them to rally around Cruz or Kasich. Again, okay, shake your head because this election has gone exactly like planned. I mean, it's fan fiction time. If you want to,
I'm not mocking the prediction. I'm just laughing at the idea of everything that's happening right now.
Yes, I honestly think it's going to be just weird and ugly, and it's we think we're going to know what it's going to look like after the 15th, and we're not. We're going to be still in this haze of fear and humor until the convention, I think. I mean, that's
maybe. But
yeah.
How about this scenario? Trump wins Florida, which is a significant pile of votes, and then Kasich does win Ohio. He's very popular there, and then a deal gets made. Kasich knows he's not going to be president of the United States, and Trump says to him, how'd you like to be Attorney General? And what I want are you to pledge your delegates to me. Whether I don't know if that's going to be done formally or has to be done at the convention, whatever the process is, and Kasich decides to trade the little he's got for something big. And at that point, then you really do have a scenario through the convention that is Trump.
That's a really great point, and I think that's something that hasn't gotten mentioned nearly enough, is that if the Republicans do get their wishing at a contested convention, they think they're going to win. I mean, first of all, to even do that would probably hand Hillary the nomination, but at what point in this race has the Republican Party gotten anything it wants? So it's laughable to think that, we're just going to steamroll Trump, who, for all his faults, is not the worst negotiator.
Oh, and like everyone will wake up at the convention and be like, oh yeah, we should. What's that game theory thing? The prisoner's dilemma. That's what this is. We're seeing that in play. It's when you have like two people who are in jail, and if they both just agree to not say anything, they'll come out better than if one of them confesses. So it's basically saying that even though all good sense says you should work together, you don't. That it's in your best interest to work together. People still keep looking for their self-interest, and that's what's going to happen with Rubio. I mean, that's why you were laughing and shaking your head when I said Rubio's going to make a deal to pledge his delegates to Kasich or vice versa. Because if they were going to do that, they'd have fucking done it already.
Yeah.
The world is on fire right now.
I agree with what you're saying, Josh. I was laughing at the fact that if we were to go a year ago and think that this party would rally behind Ted Cruz, how crazy that would be. But it's true. It's probably what's going to try to happen.
Well,
It's
let's
just, I don't know
slow
how else to
down.
put it, but it's a
Ted Cruz is so unpopular, they're literally talking about drafting Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney. I mean, that's how bad it's gotten for the party. They have to look
I saw that.
outside of the candidates that they already have, even though they started with 17. They started with 17, and they still can't find a candidate that any of them want. Trump today dropped out of CPAC, the big annual conservative convention. He was supposed to speak Saturday. He says he couldn't make it because he had to give a speech in Wichita, which his campaign says in a state called Canassus. Peter, why do you think Trump pulled out of this event after all this talk about how he's going to be the big unifier of the party?
You know, Trump doesn't really care to be part of the party. I mean, this is just a convenient vehicle for him. He's smart enough to know that, the Democrats don't want any newcomers at this point. They've got Hillary. And he's smart enough to know that independent is a really crappy way to run for president, at least from the beginning. And so, he's attached himself to this Republican process because that's the most convenient platform that's been available to him. And he's decorated himself as a conservative because that also matches, some of his stuff, particularly the white anger part. That's where the angry white men live. But I mean, Trump's commitment to any of these things is so shallow. It's his commitment is to Trump. And so if CPAC doesn't seem like a happy place for him to be, well, fuck him, and he'll go someplace else.
Well, this is a guy who's already somewhat starting to work on a general election strategy, and, he's going to forget Democrats and independents. He's going to have to win over Ted Cruz voters. Josh, why not go to CPAC? Why go to Canassus?
First of all, I think because the discovery of Canassus is one of the biggest discoveries that Trump has ever brought to our country, and we should thank him for that. I think it should be made a state immediately, and the primary should be at the end of April. Now, I think that CPAC is weird because there's already been a kind of like thing in the Republican Party about CPAC. Like a lot of your more, sometimes like your more moderate Republicans, such as they are, and your real extreme ones are both kind of sick of CPAC. It's kind of like how nerds are about Comic-Con now. They're like, it's too mainstream. So that's already part of it. But you would think with Trump's conservative credentials being under question that he would go to CPAC and, just bring the house down. But so this move, again, no fucking idea why he even would consider putting out a hastily written press release to drop out of CPAC. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Lost Iowa.
What got him more press today? Going to CPAC or saying he wasn't going to go?
And to be fair, CPAC, I can easily see him spinning that as like the donor class and the establishment, even though they're supposed to be like they were the insurgents before he got in the race. But yeah, I think that
4 or 5 straight years also.
Yeah, so I think that maybe it's a I'm bucking the establishment play because there's definitely people there who are going to be taking shots at him. So I think rather than try to stand up to that kind of onslaught and deliver a successful return, he's just going to walk away and say, establishment trying to stop your boy Trump, but I'll be in Kansas with real Americans.
Not Canada. Don't say Canada.
I think one of the ironic things is that he's really being hit hard and being forced to explain how he's going to unify the party. Meanwhile, the party is out there completely disavowing their own frontrunner, and yet no one's asking them how they're going to unify a party after they buck the guy who won almost every state before the convention. Anyway, so one last thing. So we all always talk about how voting in America is always choosing between the lesser of two evils, and the polls are just consistently showing that this year that's going to be the case more so than ever before. So in the last CNN poll among all general election voters, Trump had the highest unfavorables of anyone by far. He had 60% of voters say they have an unfavorable opinion of Trump. The second highest, and it's not even close between 2 and 3, was Hillary Clinton with 55%. 55% have an unfavorable opinion of Clinton compared to only 33% have an unfavorable opinion of Bernie and only 38% have an unfavorable opinion of Marco Rubio. Peter, what does it say about the state of our democracy when the two candidates we expect to be their respective party nominees are the two least popular people in the entire race.
It says we're horrible and that our country will be facing another 4 years of stagnation. We've reached a point where if you kind of sum things up, the presumptive Republican nominee talks about his dick on TV, and the party itself is trying to figure out some way to get rid of him. The presumptive Democratic nominee is under investigation by a number of federal agencies for a range of things which could reach as high as the Espionage Act. That's where we sit here in early March, is those two people, one of whom is likely to be president. So the fact that both of them carry such enormous negative baggage with them is not surprising. It's hard to imagine it isn't 100% for both of them. So we're once again in this kind of election cycle where people are going to vote defensively, which generally, I think, sends people home. They sit it out, and I guess historically that favors Republicans overall. But when fewer and fewer people are willing to participate in the process, it starts to stop looking a lot like democracy and starting to look like just some kind of circus that we run every couple of years before the oligarch, pre-chosen oligarch sort of takes back the White House.
Eric, you're up there in your socialist utopia of Canada where you can just watch this and not have to worry about one of these people becoming your leader for the next 4 to 8 years. How does the rest of the world see us?
I think the world collectively, and not just Canada, is laughing at the United States right now. At first, we thought it was a comedy show, and we were laughing a little bit, having fun with it. But now we realize that the reality is about to come true, and it's quite scary, the fact that a person like Donald Trump, with all the insane, batshit crazy things he said, might actually get elected. Or, on the reverse, Hillary Clinton, who is the queen of flip-flopping, refusing to take a stance, is under investigation for her email scandal, might also get elected. I mean, what does it say about American politics? That it's an absolute gong show.
Well, and Mexico, by the way, yesterday voted to ban Donald Trump from the country. So that's how the
Mexico City, just
other
the city,
side.
not the
Okay, fair enough. Josh, what does all this? What does all this say about us?
I don't know if it's me just looking for a silver lining or what, but I think it's fucking great. I think it's great for American politics, and I'll tell you why. Because, all right, let's say the worst case scenario happens. Trump wins the election because it's Hillary, Bloomberg, and Trump. Hillary and Bloomberg split the resigned and settling vote. And Trump gets the zealots. And so you have President Trump who's, whipping his giant dick out all over the country. And you're going to probably see, there's going to be some snakes who go to the guy with the power and, try to get warm in his aura. But there's going to be people who are genuinely pissed, Republicans and Democrats, who will actually fucking work to try to stop him. So no, you don't get to interrupt my optimistic plan for America, Eric, with your Canadian negativity, with your traditional negative Canadian attitudes.
I agree that maybe the Congress and Senate will work together. What I'm worried about is his diplomatic relations with other countries.
Well, first of all, you're right about that. That's actually that could suck a lot. But the thing is you have Trump in Congress. See, I don't think he'll even notice. I don't even think he'll take a meeting with the world leader, and the world will just probably want to sit it out because they don't want to be noticed by him. I'm half kidding.
All I can say,
but I'm just.
We have one
thing
one thing to look forward to. Hang on. One thing to look forward to, then I'll let you speak. Kanye West 2020.
Kanye West 2020 will. He's the hero we deserve and the hero we need.
Trump is white Kanye.
But I think it would be an interesting sort of dynamic to have Congress and Trump at each other's throats, Trump attacking them on corporate money and them attacking Trump on everything else. That could be good for American democracy. Hillary Clinton, again, I guess I'm in love with her because I do not see her as anything more than a boring corporate centrist. Not as bad. It's just similar to Obama. I don't see, there's really no real difference between the two. Again, except maybe an emotional one, which that's justified. But so, I mean, the fact that Hillary Clinton is so unliked, this might be the only way she could win. It's the only way she could win.
Would have aimed as high as Obama did, even though he failed a lot. He aimed pretty high, and I mean, he missed a lot, but he did. Hillary, from the beginning, just does not aim high.
You know, you're right, and that's a fair point. It would be interesting to see if she got in the office and continued her sort of strategy of not rocking the boat, make it through the next election. Or if she'd be in the Oval Office and be like, finally, and she would be genuine, whether it's in favor of Wall Street or in favor of populism, but she could be genuine for once. That could happen too. I'm saying that these, I know, Peter, I know.
No way. Her first day in office is her first day of the campaign for re-election.
See, now, this is the lesson this election is teaching us. And by us, I mean those of us who know about and understand politics better than most people. And that is to say that will never happen is not a thing that we can fucking say anymore. We can't. 6 months ago, it was obvious Trump was going to do this.
I think with Hillary we can.
I think with Hillary we have a little more certainty. Because a year ago, she was the presumptive nominee, and now she is. She's a person who's all appetite. I mean, she's never satisfied. So being the first woman president isn't enough. She's got to be the first woman president who's reelected, which proves that. And then she's got to have to do something else to push,
change the Constitution, make a third term. I think that's a plan I've heard before.
Something like that. I mean, she's never done. And
it's nonsense, Peter. She is a boring centrist. Like she'll want to keep the job. She might want to create a legacy. She's not going to start a war. She's not going to wreck the economy.
She likes war.
She does enjoy a good war, I will admit. But she'll wag the dog a little, but she won't start it.
She sent you to Iraq.
No, she didn't. President Bush's executive order calling an active ready reserve sent me to Iraq.
Right, she voted in.
Keep the uniform handy because she'll find someplace for you. Don't worry.
My point is that I don't think that even with Trump, it's not nearly as dire as you guys seem to believe. And I understand why, because it feels like nothing matters. And shit's over.
Scenario with President Trump is good for our democracy, you said, because basically for the next 4 years we won't have a country.
No, I'm saying that the partisan sports team lines, the battle lines, will be fucking erased. They will be completely erased. It will be as close to a hard reset as we could have without the type of revolution that the blood of patriots that Jefferson thought should water that tree of liberty.
That's still 4 years of basically not having a functioning country.
First of all, we haven't had a functioning Congress since 2008. I mean, it's literally been the worst Congress you could possibly have. We almost defaulted on our debt. And here we are 2 years later. The economy's good. Jobs aren't bad. We come around. Like, that's kind of why America's cool. We come around even when we are run by fucking morons. So, I don't think it's nearly that dire. I think it's interesting, and I think it's more important for how the voters react. Because if the majority of American people see a guy like Trump and say no, America's going to be around for a very long time.
Let me just paint a quick picture. Let's picture Trump heading into a meeting with the Chinese. How the hell is that going to go?
He's going to go in there and he's going to say, "Welcome from China." Oh. He always says China.
All right. Well,
look, it's terrifying. I'm going to put in a vote for Dyer to kind of lay down a marker. And assuming any of us are still, not in labor camps 4 years from now or being re-educated, I'm going to lay that marker down for Dyer.
Fuck that. Why do you think I'm defending her now? I'll see you. I'll be in the office like, Peter, you're not working. Peter.
Yeah, I got my backup plan, too. I'm learning Mandarin, so I'm going to be one of the overseers when the Chinese take over. You guys
cash in their loans.
I'm going to be like cracking the whip against your backs. Make the iPhones faster.
All right. Well, that's the state of our American democracy. We'll be back next week, hopefully, unless we're in camps, and we'll talk about the 8,000 debates that they have scheduled for next week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for rating Latest.com.